Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. In this technical analysis of the stock market video, we're going to start off here with the ETF dashboard, work our way through the key index ETFs, take a look at one of my key indicators, the McClellan Oscillator and Summation Index, and check in on the macro chart. So let's start off right here. So this week, 3 out of the 4 index ETFs were in the red. Okay, and the worst performer was the S&P, but again, the movement wasn't very big at all, was it? Less than 0.5% in terms of the movement. The only one that was positive, and there was the Russell 2000 IWM, is barely positive. Everything's still very negative on the year, and the Russell is the weakest, no change. When we look at the 16 sectors that I track, well, you know, the prior 2 weeks, we'd had 15 up and 1 down for 2 weeks in a row. Now, all of a sudden, we're back to 50-50, and that's exactly where we are year to date. So now we're kind of very, very neutral, even Steven, okay? And the worst performer this last week was IBB, Nasdaq Biotech, down 7.9%. The semiconductors continue to edge to the forefront ever so slightly, up 2%. But when you look at year to date, wow, Nasdaq Biotech now is leading to the downside, ahead of retail and ahead of home construction. The strongest performer, utilities, up 6%. Amazing. Okay, so that's the picture there with the ETF dashboard. Let's start off here with the Dow Diamonds. Okay, so down $1.46 on Friday. After a 2-day push, it was kind of a weird week, really. Down for 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, up Wednesday, Thursday, and down to basically almost unchanged on Friday. So what happened on Thursday here with the Dow Diamonds? When you zoom in, we come up and we kind of get real close to this 233-day. This is my version of the 200-day, okay? 233 SMA. And, we then got repelled back down to the downside. And what did we do? We closed the gap that occurred on April 3rd, okay? And so up above here, if you take the pivot high from April 2nd and the pivot high from March 26th, actually, it was on the Dow Diamonds, it was March 26th. We've got a resistance zone. Should we continue to push a little bit higher, I'm expecting the diamonds to run into resistance between 423.60 and up here at 428. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's where we sit. We're not extremely, we're not overbought from the standpoint of getting above the 70 level on the RSI. We're just kind of trending ever so slightly still to the upside, staying above the 10-day moving average. Let's take a look at the SPY. SPY was down 72 cents on Friday. So again, very slight movement going on. And here's the picture. Same thing happened on Thursday as the Dow, coming up, touching the 233 and getting slightly into that resistance zone that I've identified. Again, it's the April 2nd high to the March 25th high. And over here on the weekly, I've only identified the March 25th high because of this. This to me is a valid weekly pivot point, and that's right there. I don't see one comparable to the April 2nd here on the weekly chart. So this is the stronger level, but I still think that this is a resistance zone that should we push a little bit higher. So when I look at the Elliott Wave picture, let's just start off with the weekly chart. Here's where I think we're doing. I think we're moving our way sideways here in a wave 4 because we had a sharp A, B, C zigzag down for wave 2 back in 2022. So now I think we're working our way sideways. We've had the first corrective wave, which was a flat and expanded flat, A, B, C. And now we're doing it what we call a connecting wave structure, the X wave, which can take a variety of forms. My default is a zigzag. So we'll see how much further this wants to push to the upside. It may only go like right into here. Okay, we'll see what happens. I've just got this as a placeholder up here. And so when you have a WXY, the Y is another corrective pattern that could be any corrective pattern. Could be a triangle that stretches sideways. It could be another flat. It could be a zigzag. So right now, one wave at a time. I think we're trying to complete this X wave, and then I think we're going to continue to have volatile sideways movement out in here. The real question is for how long. Okay, so let's go back to the daily view. Here's the Elliott Wave picture on the daily view. Here's what I'm looking at. So the interesting thing, I talked about the resistance areas up in here. Okay, now when I look at this as an ABC for a X wave, which it may morph into something else, but right now I'm using this as my default zigzag. Here's where C equals A. Well, it's pretty interesting, and that's at 570. Okay, so that's right here at the high that was achieved on Thursday, slightly above this pivot high, okay, and right into that zone that we just talked about. If we continue to push higher, I think I've got it in here. If we continue to push higher, my next target would be the 138% extension for C equal A. And that'd be, say, 596, let's say. So here we are, 570. We continue to push higher. Next target would be 596. Okay, so that's the picture with the SPY. Let's take a look at the Qs. Okay, so here's the Qs. And we were down 32 cents on Friday. So let me zoom in a little bit. So here's the daily. So an inside, slightly down, almost basically unchanged picture. Now, we have pushed with the Qs a lot stronger than on either the SPY or the diamonds, right? We've gone above the April 2nd pivot high. We did that back over here on May 1st, which was a week ago Thursday. And we've been bouncing around in this resistance zone. Okay, here's the March 25th high. And what is that? I've got that identified, 493.62. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see if this is going to be able to push above. And again, the reason I have this line darker than this line is because this ties to the weekly pivot that I've got identified over here. So I think that is a much stronger pivot point than this one right here. And of course, that's exactly what seems to be the case. So now we're watching to see if we get a rollover. It hasn't done it yet. It hasn't. Thought maybe we're getting it in the middle of the week, but not so much. We're just not getting the breakdown just yet. But that's where we sit here with the Qs. And boy, I tell you, when you look at the compression, the ranges on these has been really, really quiet, very quiet. 493 high to low. Friday, it was $5.34 high to low on the Qs. And even when you look at the weekly, it's the tightest week, I think, in 7, right? 2, 4, 6, 7. Tightest range since back over here, the week of March 16th. And it's the same thing, whether you look at the Qs or look at the SPY, it's the same picture on a weekly basis, right? The most compressed week. So a pause before continued thrust to the upside, or a pause and we're going to get a reversal for a couple of weeks. We'll see. Right now, I mean, I've got the picture here on the SPY that I just talked about. We'll see if it plays out. Let's take a look at IWM. Okay, so this was down 37 cents on Friday, but I said it was the only one of the 4 indices that were positive this week, right? It was up 33 cents. Wow. Basically, practically unchanged. Okay, so above the range of this week, we have a resistance zone. So again, the April 2nd pivot, which is 203.33, and so far we haven't punched above that. And you go back to the March 25th pivot, and we're looking at 209.27. So 203 to 209, 6-point range for a resistance zone. And this is the stronger one as it ties back to the pivot that we have over here on the weekly chart. So watching this is continued to trend, continue to push. All of these are riding above the 10-day moving average. Nothing has broken down yet. Okay, so that's where we sit there. Let's take a look at the McClellan oscillator. So on Friday, the breadth of the market was pretty neutral, as it was. It was on the bullish side of neutral on Wednesday and Thursday. But 56% of the total was advancing on Friday. So we're sitting with a McClellan oscillator at plus 143, okay, right here. So we're overbought. We're just not extremely overbought as we were, but we're still overbought in the market. And when you look at the summation index, look what it's doing. Okay, so it is now at the highest level, at 1692, the highest level of the year. It's above the February high that was achieved, January, February high. So after breaking down in here and the big sell-off that occurred, we've snapped, easy for me to say, snapped back very strongly and are pushing above the February highs. Okay, so is that a sign? Is it going to lead us to new highs? We'll see. I think we're eventually going to get there. It's just how much gyration is going to occur between now and then. The last thing I want to look at today is the macro charts. Let me just pull these macro sectors. Okay, real estate. IYR. I always want to say IWR. IYR is up for what? 3 weeks in a row. Actually, a big reversal candle here, and then we had 3 follow-on pushes. But this week, down 59 cents. So kind of a sideways, a little bit of a pause. You look at the banking area, KBE, the banks were up 29 cents. Not a huge move, but 4th week in a row. Okay. And then the home construction, ITB, I showed that on the ETF dashboard, right? Remember that, how weak it was? Man, this is a really, really sick picture. Just, there's nothing positive about this at all. And the peak occurred back over here in October of 24. So, home builders, if you remember back to the great financial crisis, they all peaked. I believe it was like 2006. Some maybe even 2005, but 2006, well before the Dow Industrials or the S&P or all the major indices. So this is going to be interesting to see, does this hold? So right now we're talking, what is that, October of 24. So what, we're 18 months out? Okay, that's where we sit. All right, that's it for today. If you felt like the video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to this YouTube channel, hit that little subscriber button. And if you'd like more information, head on over to joehenches.net. Everyone, have a great week. We'll talk to you on the next video.